Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I wanted to thank Hometeam for joining us for this show. I'm excited to find out more information and also to make the viewers aware of the great things that this brother is doing now and then also in the future. Now, for you, Hometeam, why the name?
Well, Hometeam actually refers to the African diaspora. Well, actually, before I start, I want to thank you guys for having me on the show. Definitely, I'm definitely honored.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, so Hometeam basically, like I said, it refers to the African diaspora. You know, the African people all over the world. You know, in America, in the Caribbean, in South America, in Africa, Europe, Asia. So it definitely refers to, I guess, a Pan-African idea of, you know, of unity that, you know, even though we're dispersed throughout the earth, you know, we're still one people. And so that's what the whole idea is about.
All right. So some people might be wondering, what's your educational background?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have a degree in history, and I have a minor in political science. I recently just got my master's in social science. And basically, when I got my master's in social science, it pretty much taught me how to look at the world and research it from a proper historical perspective. And that really helped me to get a proper understanding of not only African history, but world history in general. And because I got that perspective, I was able to teach it to others. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's very important to have that educational background and to know how to research and to apply it.
Definitely. And I was a political science major myself. I got my bachelor's in political science, so I definitely learned that. You know,
yeah.
So, you know, what actually initially led you to be interested in African history?
Well, as a child, I was actually always very interested in where my people came from. Like I would always ask my mom, like, you know, where do we come from? And of course, she didn't really know the answer. But you know, going through like school, I would hear about, you know, slavery and, you know, the history of African people, you know, in the New World. And so I figured that, okay, we don't really have any history, you know, pretty much. And I guess that had an effect on me that I wasn't even really aware of. And so, yeah, I guess what really made me interested is when I went to college and I took a class in African history, and I was exposed to some things, but I felt as though, you know, there had to be more. So because I believed in myself as an Afro-descendant male, I knew that my ancestors had to do more than, you know, slavery and, you know, their interaction with Europeans. And so I delved into it, and I learned a lot of new things. And so that's my experience with education in college definitely helped me gain that foundation or an interest in African history.
Definitely. I think that's how it happens sometimes because my mother really put the foundation down when I was younger, but I wasn't as interested as I was later on once I got to college and became an adult. And, you know, I look back now, I thank her for that because even though I wasn't ready for it back then, it laid the foundation. And once my mind opened a little bit, I look back at that foundation. It was easier for me to make the transition into knowledge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, my experiences was somewhat similar to Hometeam. It's a little bit different because when I went to high school, I just remember going to school, you know, in a predominantly Caucasian high school, and when they would have, you know, lessons about African, you know, the small little chapter that they would speak on African history, it just has to do with slavery, and you can imagine how uncomfortable I was. And just sitting there just made me want to know more, only because it's just like there has to be more. Like there's not just, I knew for a fact that there wasn't just, you know, oppression and, you know, colonization, what happened before then, and that's something that they definitely don't take the chance to delve a little bit deeper in. But that kind of leads me to my next question. Now, although the interest in you personally was sparked, what made you want to go take it a little bit further and make you want to go ahead and teach it to others?
Yeah, I think that question is definitely pivotal to pretty much everything. So basically, while I was taking my master's courses, I decided to volunteer at this school in D.C. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. And I decided, because I gained this knowledge and I feel like it helped me out, I thought, I would teach children pretty much. And so that experience literally changed my life. And it actually filled me with a sense of purpose. And because I guess initially, I guess it was a bad experience for me because, while I was teaching, African history, I realized like how much they didn't know and how lost they were. And I realized that, how this lack of African history, I guess, helped them to really feel, a certain way about themselves and inevitably how others viewed them. And because they had this low self-esteem that some people might not even catch, on the surface level. And so that experience was, it filled me with purpose to be like, hey, I have to teach this to them from, a proper historical perspective. They've been taught literally their entire lives that Africa is a dark continent with dark people and a dark history, and that anything that you've ever accomplished was accompanied by Europeans, pretty much.
Right.
So when you're taught that, you become heavily reliant upon how others view you and trying to validate your own humanity by their own worldview, and that's terrible. That's really bad. So when I came to that realization, I was like, yo, I have to do something about this, and so that's pretty much where Hometeam got to start.
Yeah, and you mentioned you were teaching children. What is the biggest misperception that these kids have of Africa? I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but was it one prevalent thing that they kept bringing up over and over that was just completely inaccurate?
That's a great question. I think one of the biggest things that I saw was one, there were two ends of the spectrum. Basically, one spectrum was that, they either overly romanticized Africa into that it wasn't, or they had very, very negative views on what African history was and what African people did and things of that nature. And that was pretty much the majority, the negativity, because popular culture advances that idea of the dark history and the dark continent and stuff like that. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions was that Africans were they all lived in huts and they all looked the same. Mm-hmm. I think that was a very interesting thing. I used to teach about African diversity. There are Africans in the West, Africans in the South. They speak different languages. And another huge misconception was this idea that black people were selling other black people in slavery. And I noticed that not so much amongst the children, like the sixth graders, but amongst like the older like high school children. Mm-hmm. Basically, that perspective is wrong because there was no Pan-Africanism back then. Like I said, there was tremendous African diversity. So you had people that spoke different languages that never really were able to communicate with each other. And so when you really understand African history, you understand that African empires pretty much started with one ethnic group pretty much joining all the other ethnic groups together. And so when these empires fell, that's when, the Europeans came in at that pivotal time in African history, and they were able to pretty much communicate with the different ethnic groups because they didn't identify with each other. And so that's how this whole idea, I guess, of black people selling other black people came about. But it's when you really understand what it was, that's not the case at all.
Right, and I think they oftentimes that's said basically to for Europeans to basically deflect blame.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I think maybe you could touch on this too. A lot of people think that Africans really just didn't fight back. There was efforts to fight back against the Europeans as well. So definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, like for instance, when I guess the Songhai Empire broke up, the people who started the Songhai Empire were like pretty much the Songhai people, pretty much. And so there were many different ethnic groups, like the Fulani people, the Gao people, and many other ethnic groups, the Tuareg within the Songhai Empire. And, like I said, they spoke different languages. Sometimes they even had different religious beliefs. And so when that empire broke up, they started their own little kingdoms, right? So the Europeans came individually to these old kingdoms. They went to a Fulani man and said, hey, I'm about to go to the New World, and, I need some slaves. And so the Fulani man would be like, oh, okay, let me go to the Mandinka man, or the Mandinka village, or the Mandinka kingdom, and get me a Mandinka and sell him to this Portuguese guy, right? He's not going to go to a Fulani village, to his people, to his culture, to his worldview, and to his religion, right? So that's where this whole idea of black people selling other black people just doesn't fit in that, 16th and 17th century narrative. It just doesn't work.
Well, I appreciate you for actually debunking that rumor, because that's something that seems to be such a common misconception, and I can see how, people can internalize things like that, and, it will in turn affect them in their everyday lives or any type of goals that they're trying to achieve. I did want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you, definitely.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, I did want you to tell the people about your work. What are some of your tasks in your current projects?
Well, I've actually had numerous projects. I'm trying to iron out, what I really want to focus on, because I've had so many different ideas. And basically my very first project ever was the Tears of Anuba app. And I used to promote that a long time ago. But it's available on iPhone store. And I'm really trying to push that more and promote that more and focus on that. But I guess the main project that I'm working on as of right now is this comic called Korakon, and I'm really trying to make it a really solid storyline and to really push it in the future. But Korakon is basically a comic that incorporates the history of the Wagadu Empire and the Mali Empire as well, and it also incorporates the mythology from both of those empires. And so that's the main project that I'm working on as of right now. Before Korakon, I worked on Africans and Greek mythology, which was going to be like a graphic novel. Because I didn't really get the funds that I needed for that, I kind of put that on hold. So I guess I have multiple projects that I'm working on, but I guess I'm trying to figure out which one should I really stick with and iron out. So that's one of my flaws as of right now.
You're not the only one with that, and it's funny you mentioned Greek mythology because I watched one of your videos and you was actually saying that Thor may be based off an African god.
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Yeah, on one of the videos I was watching when you was talking about Greek mythology, you said that Thor might actually be based on an African god.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually, he was, I forget his name exactly, but he was a scholar in Iceland. He was like a historian. And what he was saying was that that Thor might actually be based off of the African warrior Memnon, who was later deified in Egyptian and even Greek mythology. So Memnon was like pretty much Greek mythology. Like the Greeks used to interact with Ethiopians or what we today would call, Sudanese people or ancient Nubians and stuff like that. So they created this, and they included these Ethiopians in their mythology. So Memnon was a very popular Ethiopian warrior who participated in the Trojan War. And after he died, Zeus pretty much made him immortal and stuff like that. And so what this Icelandic scholar was saying in his time was that, Thor is basically loosely based off of Memnon, pretty much.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is very interesting. And just one more thing, you do have a website where you give African history lessons?
Yeah. This website is called Patreon. It's a website mainly for artists and I guess musicians. But I thought it was a great website to use where I can actually teach full blown African history lessons. And on Patreon, if you support, you'll be able to access these videos that I create. And you'll also be able to access, the sources that I post for you guys and also the updates that I have for my Coricon comic that I'm working on as of right now.
Right. You also have some hats too, right?
Yeah. I have these Hometeam hats. Basically, it incorporates, some of the history that I teach for the hats. So I have the KMT hat, which pretty much was the Egyptian symbol for Kemet. And I also have I guess this Pan-African model, Nubian model, the Nubian Queen snapback. And I sell that on Etsy.com, ETSY.com. And anybody can go check it out. And I used to go to a lot of hair shows and natural hair shows and become a vendor and get a lot of my sales through there. But you can definitely check out the website, Etsy.com, and order it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I know that me and Sewell will definitely be supported. So I'm urging everyone else to check out a lot of the great things that he's working on, that Hometeam is working on now. I did want to ask you though. Now, are you doing this on your own, or do you have a team behind you?
Well, a lot of the different projects that I do, I guess I outsource some of the work. So
okay.
I might have a friend that I know who's an artist that likes to draw, an illustrator that might help me out, or I might actually hire a professional to work, on the projects that I have. And so I personally like to, hire professionals because, I want it to be, real quality material because, I value what, we as African people create. So I want it to look nice. And so I like to hire and outsource, my funds to professionals. So, I guess, right now I'm technically I am working by myself, but in a way I do have a team, especially with the Coricon comic specifically.